I want to build on what Sarah Harper talked about this morning about the demographic wave. That's not me, by the way. That's a Levi's ad by the photographer Nick Knight. And it exemplifies what a lot of companies and brands and governments and local authorities are addressing at the moment. We are seeing a world in which we are aging rapidly, and Sarah talked very in great detail about this morning. We're going to have extended working lives, and increasingly a lot of the goods and services that we're going to produce, a lot of the environments which we're going to experience are going to be experienced by far greater numbers of older people and shrinking numbers of younger people. Just to look at the demographic picture, our own demographics are eye-catching. 11.5 million pensioners already. That's a fifth of the UK population. And in 2008, we passed a milestone. We now have more pensioners than we have teenagers. And you can see that what was a population pyramid in 1950 is flattening out. But our aging population is nothing as compared to Japan, where a quarter of all citizens are now over 65. And Japan has shifted from a country with a young population, average age of 22 in 1950. The average age will be 55 by 2050. And I have a friend who works in the Building Research Institute in Tokyo, and he said to me, if you throw a stone in Japan, it will hit a senior, which is quite a good way of describing the fact that Japan will have 44% of its population over 60 by 2050, but we won't be far behind. 30% of us will be over 60. So what does all this mean for designers? I work next door, just the other side of the Albert Hall at the Royal College of Art. We educate and train designers in all the disciplines: car makers, furniture makers, architects, fashion designers, and so on. And the challenges of age are absolutely profound. And designers traditionally being a young profession, built around the kind of virtues of style and speed and youth. And there are a lot of misconceptions, and these are some of the things that I would just like to address in my time with you this afternoon. So I want to tackle 8 basic challenges, design challenges of aging. I think the first challenge is the one of definition, because there is a tendency amongst designers to lump all older people, and I find myself, by some mysterious process, in that demographic now. All older people are grouped into a box called grey market or silver surfers, and there's a tendency to treat older people as a homogenous group. But actually, people in their early 60s are very different from people in their late 80s, and older people are as diverse and as complex a population sector as young people. And our own research has shown that one of our researchers came up with a concept called Yo-Yo, young, old, in which she defined older people as going back and forth along a spectrum of choices, making young decisions one day, old decisions the next. They might buy a kind of sporty car, and then the next car they buy is a very sensible, energy-saving one, and so on and so forth. And this idea of switching modes and being multimodal is quite an interesting one. And she also talked about older people being seesaws. They've seen a lot, but they will continue to see a lot in the future. And this kind of being on the fault line between the past and the future is a very interesting way of looking at definition of older people. There's also the second challenge is another big misconception. You see it in these images, these Getty images of older people looking very happy in golfing jumpers and all of that. And transitions in later life are regarded as generally a kind of smooth fade to grey. But our own research indicates the opposite, that disruption, displacement, dependency, much more typically associated with younger people, they're also a feature of later life when you consider cliff's edge retirement, moving house from a family home to a small apartment, loss of a partner or a spouse, or sudden dependency where you fall and break a hip, which happens to a lot of older people, or you have a stroke. And it's this idea of old age being every bit as disruptive as late adolescence is something that has not been properly appreciated, and I think will change in the future. The challenge of new technology, a lot of people have talked about this. There are 40 million people in the UK who are termed digitally excluded, and the majority of these are older people who never experienced a computer in their workplace and so on. It's also to do with mental models of older people. Those of us who've grown up in a pre-digital analog era will have a different mental model of doing things, often described as one action, one effect. So, press a light switch, the light comes on, turn on the wireless, the sound comes on, continue to turn the dial and the volume goes up. This is a bit different from select, click, scroll down, select, double click, scroll down, double click, click, action. That's a bit different. And there are a lot of issues around how older people access new technology. And a lot of our own work has indicated that if you use very well-known archetypes, you will have a lot more success, that you create mental models that people can relate to, that are much more intuitive than the kind of interfaces that we have traditionally had. And the mobile phone companies and providers are absolutely kind of getting very worried about the fact that their market is saturated. Older people buy lots of mobile and smartphones, but then don't use them. This is some work with Nokia around putting the phone on a device which turns all the information into a chalkboard interface. And this is some work that we've done with Samsung about the setup of the phone. A lot of people don't even get the SIM card and the battery in. And this is a book, this is a storybook, which has the phone inside it, and you turn the pages and you read the book, and it says, this is your SIM card, take it out, now put it in there, and so on and so forth. And the book does not release the phone to you till it's properly in and charged. And Samsung are now actually developing this, and they're looking at this in terms of digital camcorders as well, because they're very difficult to set up. So this idea of using traditional archetypes. The fourth challenge is one of cognitive decline, because we tend to think of addressing the problems of aging around physical and sensory impairment. There's been a huge amount of work in that area. But one consequence of living longer, and I'm sure you will have got this from Sarah's talk, is that minds, you live so long that your mind packs in before your body, and cognitive decline is now a major issue for designers. There are 750,000 people in the UK with dementia, and 70% of all care home residents are people who exhibit significant confusion, and 2/3 of all residential care beds are taken up by people who have got Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia. So there's quite a lot of work going on, both in my own research centre and lots of others around the country and internationally. There's a big national challenge at the moment. We are going to see a lot more, again, going back to archetypes. We did a lot of work in one care home provider, looking at creating meal settings with red check tablecloths and better lighting to create the anticipation and to kind of recover the memory of a meal. And we've also done work around, a lot of work around tableware and drinking and eating vessels, because a lot of people get very upset when they go and see their elderly residents in care homes being given bright red beakers as though they were children. So this is using proper ceramic beakers, and there's a lot of work going on in this area. And I think the challenge of cognitive decline will be huge, as will be the challenge of public space. Public space has always been hotly contested around disability and aging. It's one of the key factors of inclusive design. And I think we're going to see major changes over the next 20, 30 years to our streets and a whole kind of filigree layer of digital information. Those of you who walked up today up Exhibition Road and have seen all the changes on Exhibition Road, if you walk from South Ken Tube up Exhibition Road here, you will have seen something called shared space. And this is really where you remove all the kind of markers of the street. You get rid of the curbs and the barriers and the rails, and it's a bit like a supermarket car park where nobody has right of way, and the cars and the people and the pedestrians and the buggies and the cyclists all kind of negotiate with each other. Well, that's absolutely fine if you can look at people and you've got reasonable sight. Guide Dogs for the Blind, one of the sight loss charities, has taken Kensington and Chelsea Council to court, to the High Court, over shared space because it's problematic for people who are using long canes, who've got guide dogs, who are using other types of senses. And we've done a lot of research in this area. So you can see the guy on the left, Ross. How is he negotiating? Well, he's hearing things. He's mainly using sight, a bit of memory, and a map. So this is from 1 centimetre to 1 kilometre of how he negotiates the street. But Dick is an older guy. He's short-sighted. He uses a long cane. He's relying on the railings, the curb line, the tactile paving, the building line, and a lot of memory. Remove the railings, the curb line, and the tactile paving. He's in trouble. He's going to be in trouble on Exhibition Road. And, you know, there's all kinds of other challenges of the public realm, the closure of public toilets and so on and so forth, that you know, all facilities that older people, and we will, and, you know, we are the next generation of older people, we will want public facilities, and, you know, a lot of things are going in the opposite direction. The challenge of economic independence. People talk about independent living for older people, and they often think about that without economic independence. We are not going to be able to retire. There's a pensions black hole, and it's problematic for younger people because, you know, already, if you look at our labour market in Britain, a lot of people who would have retired can't retire. They're blocking up the labour force. People can't get in at the bottom. We know we have 1 million young unemployed. But the fact is that more older people are going to be around longer in the workplace. And we have to think about how we manage an ageing population, how we are all going to work longer. Do we want to work in the kind of offices and workplaces we have now, which are very, very, very tiring? And we need to think about places where we can concentrate, collaborate, and I'm very interested in the whole notion of contemplation at work, the idea of being able to sustain yourself and recover and recuperate during the working day. What does that physical environment kind of feel like? The challenge of hospital care is another big one because older people make extensive use of hospitals. They tend to stay in, you know, their recovery times in hospital tend to be longer than younger group. And if you read the Stafford report, and I read it in great detail because we have a healthcare group at the RCA, you will see the scandalous treatment of older people. And the issue is, of course, is that you know, we need to find new ways of keeping older people away from the primary care centres and do more distributed healthcare and care in the community. And one of the ways to do that is to kind of rethink the ambulance. The ambulance has actually been unchanged since the Crimean War. You swoop, you scoop, and then you bring people back to hospital, where lots and lots of older people having routine treatments are clogging up the whole system. Could we not have a new ambulance, and this is what we're working on, that is lighter, that is better, that has modular treatment packs, 360-degree access to the patient, and is actually a travelling treatment room in which you can actually do stuff to people on the spot in their communities using a digital interface so that you can get their electric records up on the screen, and you can actually deal with people in their own communities without travelling back and clogging up the hospital interior. Final challenge is the challenge of the unprecedented. We are in unknown territory. We are witnessing, as Sarah said, the greatest change to the age balance in the world's population since the end of infant mortality in the early 19th century. The design implications are huge. And just to take one example, one of the largest rises in sexually transmitted diseases is now the over 50s, and yet all our public health information about sexual health is aimed at young people. In the UK, 1 in 12 of people diagnosed with HIV is already over 50. And we've been working with a Fulbright scholar on a sexual health campaign which has just been rolled out. And so I think I leave you with my 8 challenges of aging with the thought that age is not a condom. Thank you very much. Thank you.
For more big thinking about the future, go to iq2if.com.